All right, today we're jumping into a really big question, one that sits right at the intersection of modern monetary theory and, well, the entire planet. We're going to unpack a powerful framework that aims to connect MMT directly with ecological sustainability.
So if you've been following the MMT conversation, you've almost certainly heard this criticism, right? It goes something like, hey, if a government can't run out of its own currency, what's to stop it from just funding one destructive project after another? It's a totally fair and, frankly, a crucial question. And the framework we're digging into today offers a really compelling answer.
Okay, let's start on some familiar ground here. We all know MMT's core insight is spot on. The real limit on government spending isn't the number in a bank account. It's the actual physical stuff we have available. Labor, materials, energy. But what if our whole idea of real resources has been a little too narrow all along?
So here's our roadmap for connecting these dots. First, we'll look at MMT's real constraint and find the missing piece. Then, we're going to redefine nature as a type of real capital. That gives us a new target to aim for, equilibrium. And once we have that, policy can start working like a feedback loop, which leads us to a whole new way of thinking about governance.
Okay, first up, MMT's real constraint. Let's talk about the biophysical piece of the puzzle that's been missing. So while MMT gets it right that real resources are the limit, the theory often treats them like a static pile of stuff just sitting there. But that's not how the planet works, is it? Our resources are part of these dynamic, living systems. They regenerate, but they can also be wiped out. And that is the crucial missing link we need to add.
So how do we fix that? Well, we start by building what you could think of as an ecological balance sheet. This brings us to a huge idea: reframing nature itself as a form of real capital.
This framework suggests a really powerful shift in thinking. We need to start seeing the atmosphere, our oceans and rivers, all of biodiversity, not as things that are just out there, but as our primary form of capital. I mean, these are the fundamental productive assets that make everything else, the entire economy, even possible.
Now, I know this looks a bit complex at first glance, but the idea behind it is actually simple and pretty brilliant. It takes the concept of planetary boundaries that you might have heard of and turns it into a set of diagnostic tools for our natural capital. So suddenly climate change isn't just an environmental problem. No, it's a measurable signal about the health of our atmospheric capital. How much fresh water we use tells us about our hydrospheric capital, and you can go right down the list.
And this is where the magic happens. We're not talking about some vague, abstract limit way off in the future anymore. We're talking about measurable, manageable indicators for our most essential economic assets. It literally turns what we call environmental problems into what they really are: capital maintenance problems. Okay, so if we've defined our assets, what's the goal? What are we trying to achieve? What does sustainability actually mean in this new way of thinking?
The goal is something called real capital equilibrium. And don't get hung up on the math here. The concept is incredibly straightforward. It just means that for any given natural system, a forest, a fishery, our atmosphere, the rate we take things out can't be faster than the rate the system can put them back. It's that simple. Depletion has to equal regeneration.
To put it another way, this sets up a clear, ethical bottom line. A policy and the economy it creates is only sustainable if it stops paying for today by selling off the assets that belong to the future. So, when we see things like CO2 levels rising or our topsoil washing away, these aren't just vague environmental issues. In this framework, they are clear, quantifiable signals that our economic activity is way out of balance, that it's literally eating its own foundation.
This brings us right to the heart of the matter. How does all this connect back to MMT? How does it give the theory a brand new steering wheel? Well, policy stops being this external thing, like some emergency brake we have to slam on the economy. Instead, it becomes an internal automatic feedback loop. When our diagnostic tools, our planetary boundaries, show a real capital stock is declining, that automatically triggers a fiscal policy response. And this slide right here, this is where it all just clicks into place. For anyone familiar with MMT, that real capital disequilibrium, like too much carbon in the air, that becomes the binding real constraint MMT is always talking about. And the investment needed to restore that balance, that's precisely the kind of sovereign spending MMT describes. It grounds the theory in the hard physics of our planet, giving it the ecological anchor it was missing.
So here's the bottom line. Money is still not the constraint. The real question, the real limit on public spending becomes,
Does this specific spending help get our real capital back into balance, or does it push it further out of whack? MMT tells us what we can finance. This ecological framework tells us what we should finance.
So let's wrap this all up by looking at how we can actually turn this powerful theory into a real, practical system that we could actually use to govern.
It's pretty straightforward. When one of our real capital stocks is found to be declining, the framework says you have to respond in one of three ways. You either reduce what's causing the problem, you actively work to help the system regenerate, or you change our built infrastructure, like our energy grid, so it's not causing the problem anymore.
And you know, this isn't just some interesting thought experiment. This entire logic can be written into law. You could create a clear, operational, and legally binding system for managing our relationship with the planet.
Just imagine a law, maybe called the Real Capital Sustainability Act. Before any budget is even drafted, it would require a national checkup of all our natural assets. If a system is found to be in decline, the budget must include funding to address it. And check out Section 6, the availability of public funds shall not be considered a limiting factor. I mean, that is pure MMT logic written directly into environmental law.
So, when you bring MMT together with this dynamic, living understanding of our planet, you end up with a totally new definition of economics. It's no longer just about growth or allocating scarce resources. It becomes the science of actually maintaining the world, our most important productive asset. Just think, what would change if every single budget on Earth started from that one simple principle?